What's up, guys? Welcome to another Underused Weapons, and today we are using the L86, but that's not what we're going to be talking about. Now, granted, the L86 might be classified as an underused LMG, but we're going to be talking about the IRNV scope, which stands for the Infrared Night Vision Scope. Now, it's kind of deceptive that they even call it a scope, because there's actually no zoom to it. It's just a one times infrared, see what's in front of you, from like the first 15 meters in a slight glow. As you'll see throughout this video, it picks people up at varying distances. It really just depends on the lighting of the maps, because this thing isn't very effective outside of a certain range. You can see those guys are a fair distance away and it picks them up pretty easily. Have to finish that guy off with a Rex, but a lot of people don't really see the usage behind it, and that's to be understood because this thing is not very useful whatsoever. What kind of deters people from using it, I think, is outside of its effective range, it's really hard to pick people out of the green backgrounds because they kind of just blend in. It's really difficult to see them because there's like that hazy look to it, especially on maps where there's any sort of any sort of solar flares. You know how DICE loves to put those sun flares in there. If you got any of those going on, the lens flares, the montage moments, you're not going to be able to see jack squat with these things, and that's why people don't like it. If you recall though, when the game first came out, the infrared scope was actually very powerful. You could see people from super far away, and it was to the point where they decided they needed to nerf it. And you know how DICE nerfs things, they nerf them bad. They make them pay the price. If you were ever overpowered, they usually nerf you to oblivion, with the exception of the M16, which for some reason survived the nerfing process. You know, it got nerfed and yet it still is usable. So I guess that's the exception that proves the rule. But the infrared scope was one of the classic DICE nerfings that just completely destroyed it. It made it almost unusable, and that's where we are today. I don't think they've really tinkered with it since, and you can't really see. I would say 30 meters would be the maximum you could ever think about seeing anybody. Now, I've seen some good theories out there that they should make it so that snipers could see a little bit further. Oh, I had to leave this clip in. This is from a little bit later on in the game. Not only did I kill him, he got sandwiched by Sweat's helicopter, and I thought that was pretty entertaining, so I left it in there. But an interesting theory would be, what if they took the infrared scope and they made it so that it was more powerful on snipers? So the snipers would actually get a higher zoom than, say, like an assault rifle or even a carbine or anything like that. They wouldn't get the same zoom that a sniper rifle would get. And I think that's a pretty awesome idea. I think that would make these things almost perfect because, in essence, a scope like this is something a sniper is going to utilize a lot more. But in the same respect, a lot of people have pointed out that if they did that, it would make snipers overpowered because they could just lay in the back and pick people out of backgrounds. But I would argue that it's already pretty easy to pick people out with a normal scope, that the infrared really wouldn't offer that big of an advantage. It would just be a different type of scope to use. So what do you guys think? Do you think that they went too far in nerfing these things? You may notice that the infrared scopes are different depending on which weapon you're using. You know, some of the sniper rifles have the ones that have the crosshairs on it. Some of them just have the dot. Most of the assault rifles do have the dot. I haven't tinkered around with every single one, so I don't know if it's weapon specific, if it's, where it's from, because, like some of the scopes will look a little bit different on the British weapons. You have, what is that called, the SUSAT sight? Actually, I think that's what goes on the AUG, the SUSAT. What is the name of the scopes that they put on the Enfield type weapons? Anyways, that's going to bother me through the rest of this video, but most of the time you got this little bitty dot and you got to shoot people with it. So not the easiest way to pick people out of the background, but if you're in dark environments, which Damavon Peak does offer some instances of really dark environments, like inside the warehouse, even in the tunnel, and it's not too bad on the first base because Damavon's kind of a hazy map to begin with. You can actually do some work with this. Now, one of the ways I kind of counteract the large zoom and the recoil that you get from using a scope like that, even though it doesn't zoom, you still kind of get that scope feeling when you're shooting. You have a hard time staying on target. So one of the ways I've kind of combated that is I've been using flash suppressors on any of the weapons that I utilize the IRNV. That's a mouthful, isn't it? IRNV, Infrared Night Vision Scope. We'll just call it night vision. But it's a very difficult attachment to use, and it makes games harder than they should be, and I think that's the reason why no one uses it, because honestly it's not good, guys. I could sugarcoat this and say this is the best attachment ever, and which I try to find some positives with each attachment that we do in underused weapons, and kind of analyze why it's underused. But I think this is underused, frankly, because it just puts you at an extreme disadvantage. And oh man, I had to disarm this MCOM so many times, and it kept glitching. If you've noticed that I've been running into that a lot since they patched the game, my character will stop disarming, and I don't know why. It's really frustrating because I was really nervous that they were going to come get me right there. But luckily, this is a pretty entertaining end. But you know, the reason why this is underused, because it sucks. Simple as that. So let me know what you guys' thoughts are. Is the infrared scope as bad as I think it is, or am I just, you know, overdoing it? Am I just a big old hater? Yeah, I don't really see much use for this particular attachment, but let me know what you might like to see in a coming underused weapons. I'm thinking Claymore, so if you think that sounds good, let me know, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.